It was shocking to me to learn that in this day and age, there are still countries where it is forbidden for women to ride a bike. So many of the documents and evidence of the women even existing, their records, their trophies, their medals, they were burning them to erase any evidence of them being athletes because they knew that if the Taliban found them and found out they were athletes, they'd be branded as infidels and they would be hunted. I'm Kim Cross and I'm a writer for Bicycling. In August 2021, I got a call from my editor and she said, women cyclists are being evacuated from Afghanistan. We need to do a story about this. Immediately, I thought of Shannon Galpin, who is an American activist who's been working for a number of years in Afghanistan. She's a National Geographic explorer and she has been helping the women behind the cycling movement for a number of years. So I called Shannon and said, who do you think I can talk to who can tell this story? And she immediately put me in touch with Zara and Zakia, two women who were really still teenagers when they started a cycling movement in Bamyan, which was a pretty liberal and peaceful province in the middle of Afghanistan. They had moved back to Afghanistan after the Taliban were suppressed. Their families had both taught them how to ride bikes when they lived in Iran. They came back to Afghanistan where it was taboo for women to ride a bike. And they started this incredible movement where they convinced their culture to really change its mind. The mullahs, who were the religious leaders in their community, criticized the women and said what they were doing was obscene and profane because it was thought that a bicycle seat could threaten a woman's chastity. The girls actually talked to the mullahs and said, look, this is not just about a sport. The bicycle is a means of transportation. We want the freedom of transportation. We want to come and go as we please. If more girls can ride a bicycle, then maybe more girls can get to school. If women can ride a bicycle, maybe it'll open up more job opportunities for women. They never really came around in support, but they stopped pushing back. And soon the girls were riding as they pleased. And then other girls saw them and said, I want to learn too. Suddenly these two girls were teaching a number of other girls. And it was something like 10 girls sharing one bicycle. And they would teach each other how to ride in the streets. And then it continued to evolve and it turned into the first co-ed cycling team in the country. It was called Salsa and Shamama after the Buddhas that were destroyed by the Taliban in Bamyan. And then it evolved into the first race team. And then they put on the first co-ed cycling race in the history of Afghanistan. They didn't just do it for women, it was co-ed. And instead of making men enemies, they turned the men into allies. The men became their cheerleaders and their course marshals and their officials. It really became this kind of team effort, and it elevated cycling in Bamyan, and that kind of trickled over into other parts of Afghanistan. Shannon Galpin, who was orchestrating a lot of the evacuations, was working with this network of people on many different continents and all different time zones who were working together outside of Afghanistan to try to put the resources together to get these women out, to get them to safe houses, to get them visas and paperwork. They were calling it a digital Dunkirk. It was remarkable how it was this constellation of mostly women, some men, but mostly women, working together to help other women in this crisis. I was also surprised to learn that some women have been evacuated as late as 2024, and Shannon is still raising money to get them settled. I feel like the world has moved on to other news. A lot of people have forgotten about what happened in Afghanistan. It's been a couple of years now. There's this huge void in Afghanistan where these women used to be. There was a flourishing that happened in the 20 years since the Taliban were suppressed, and women gained a lot of rights. A lot of women's rights and human rights were destroyed almost overnight. And the women had to fear for their lives and they had to flee their country. And now there's this diaspora of Afghan women cyclists all over the world. And they're living as refugees, and that it's heartbreaking to think how much they had gained and how much they had fought for and how quickly it was lost. I think it's really important that we don't forget that.